Hi. So, I went to prison in 2018, and just before we start, I need to clarify that I absolutely do not think that what I did was okay. I don't think it's cool, but also it is one of the most interesting things about me in my life. There's a lot of interesting things, but this seems to be the one that people are most interested in hearing about, that they ask me about quite often. So, obviously, I'm going to use it for clout, because why not at this point? Long story short, I am a convicted arsonist. I was convicted of reckless arson, but there is a whole long story, so we're gonna go into it with a bit more detail. Over the years, I've told people quite a few different reasons as to why I committed this arson, but the reality is that I just simply wasn't in a great state of mind, and I'm not entirely sure why I did it. So just to give you a bit of context, I have BPD. I'm gonna slide a definition of BPD just right next to me there. If you want to do some research, you can do. But I can't bother to go into that today. Two of the symptoms that I struggle with the most is regulating my very extreme mood swings and dealing with real or imagined abandonment. So just to set the scene, I had just broken up with my partner at the time, who I'd lived with for over 2 years, I believe. Memory's not really great on that one. It was my own fault, but I couldn't see that back then. I had this big victim mindset that everybody hated me and everybody was just trying to screw me over. I've gone through phases of using different drugs, but drinking is always the one that seems to be the most harmful. It's always the one that I seem to go back to in times of stress like this. So the week previous to my arrest, I had been drinking every single day from wake till sleep. I was a fucking mess, and I'd been drinking so frequently and missing out on sleep so frequently that I actually just started hallucinating a little bit. I had asked for help, but I think because of my disorder, I can make a big deal out of the smallest things. Like, the tiniest thing can happen and I will have a super big breakdown and convince everyone that I've never felt worse, yada yada yada. So I think that when I was telling people that this time it was actually fairly serious at the end of the day, they did not believe me at the end of the day. It is the boy who cried wolf, but really it was me crying mental illness that was actually really fucking serious this time. So I spoke a little bit in my Some Serious Law YouTube video about how notoriously shitty mental health treatment can be on the NHS, namely the crisis team. I had been phoning the crisis team basically all of that week, like, begging for help. But because they knew me, they just thought that I was having a breakdown again and I was making empty threats. Honestly, I've had some of the coldest, most inhuman conversations over the crisis line, and it has made me wonder so many times in my life why the fuck those people even work there, because they just don't seem to give a shit at all. Maybe some people have had a good experience with them, but myself and a lot of other people have not. So I'm drunk as hell and I was having a really bad time of it. The majority of the scars that I have come from that particular period of time in my life. I guess I just thought that maybe I wasn't ill enough to get help, and that the reason why I just kept getting discharged without any help or support is because I needed to do something more extreme. Slightly off topic from the arson, but I was actually watching one of those reality documentaries where they follow the paramedics and the ambulance crew in the UK. There was this guy in a river under a bridge threatening to kill himself. It was like Christmas time, he was having some mental health struggles. So the paramedics picked him up, took him into the hospital, and then later on in the episode, it's the next day now, and that same man is doing the same thing, like threatening to end his life. And the paramedics are like, I don't know what causes people to be let out of hospital and put back in this situation, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh my god, this is just a perfect example of what my point has been this whole time, is that over the course of my life, especially during that time period when my mental health was really bad, I understood sort of that the reason why it's hard to access help is because of limited resources, money, and stuff like that. But if you take into account the amount of resources and money that were actually spent on ambulances, hospital visits, police coming to pick me up from places, like the sheer amount of money and resources put towards just managing these crises is surely so much more of a cost to the NHS and the government than it would have been to just actually treat me in the first place and like get a doctor to come and see me and diagnose me and give me fucking treatment. But apparently that was too hard for them. Anyways, damn, I just wanted to bring that up because I saw that man and I was like, I fucking know what you're going through. They just keep sending you into hospital and then discharging you and giving you the most stupid advice ever. Oh, imagine your problems on a leaf floating down a fucking river. I can imagine as many leaves floating down a fucking river as I want, dude. I'm still gonna have BPD. Anyways, so on the day, June 30th, 2018, I'm drunk. I'm on the kitchen floor. I'm ringing the crisis team. I'm like, dude, you need to get me some fucking help right now or something very serious is gonna happen. And this lady on the other end of the line goes, is this Alice? And I'm like, yeah. And then the line just hung up on me. It's not the first time that the crisis team has hung up on me. They are fucking dreadful. I just absolutely lost my shit. I also tried contacting my family members and they said they couldn't help me because they were busy. And I said, what are you busy doing? And they said, we're hanging up a curtain pole. Anyways, I am not sure what exactly my thought process was at that time because my memories of that day are super patchy, probably because of the trauma of what happened and also the alcohol on top of that. I can't remember ever thinking something specific like, I'm going to set this fire and the goal is, like, the ending result of this fire will be. I think I was just fucking fed up with people not listening to me, and there's only so much you can do to yourself to try and explain to people how ill you are on the inside, you know, because they just think that you're being dramatic or you're attention seeking or whatever. I just think that term is used so wrong. Like, if somebody is feeling the need to do extreme things and act in extreme ways in order to get attention, that's called mental illness, dude. People shouldn't be doing that. That is mental illness. They say, oh, it's attention seeking, like it's not, like it makes it invalid as like a mental health symptom, but that's fucking not at all. So yeah, we could probably say that the arson was an attempt at getting some attention, some help, someone to care or to see how bad things actually were on the inside. I could also say that at that time, because of the breakup, I felt like my entire life was over and that there was like no point living a life that I was living anymore. So while I don't know if I considered at the time that I could go to prison, I think maybe I would have had a subconscious thought about just going somewhere else. Often when I'm having a breakdown, I feel like I need to like drop everything in my entire life and go somewhere else and start anew. So maybe that was it. I don't know. Maybe it was to make people feel guilty for the way they were treating me. Like the fact that hanging up a curtain pole is more important than me. Just constantly being treated that way in life. Like I'm being dramatic and nobody gives a shit if you're hurting yourself again, Alice. God. And maybe it was just like a vengeful thing, like anger, like, fuck you, I'll set a fire. So, I don't know. Anywho, I remember the immediate plan in my mind was to set the fire, exit the building, and phone the fire brigade ASAP because I didn't want anybody to get hurt. Like, that was not the goal. I wasn't trying to hurt myself even. I wasn't going to set it on fire and then stay there. That sounds like a really painful death. I wouldn't do that. So I just get like a lighter that I'd been using for my cigarettes and I just went around each room, like setting anything fabric, flammable on fire. The carpet, the curtains, my washing basket, my mattress. And then I fucking remembered that a few days before that, I had bought a hamster because I thought like it would make me feel better about the breakup and give me something to do. But I totally forgot the fucking hamster was there, so I had to go and I put the hamster in a cardboard box, and for some reason I collected my beers in my bag and a couple of flapjacks. There's lore about the flapjacks, it's coming. So I exit the flat, and then I realised that I couldn't actually phone 999 because after I'd hung up on the phone from my family telling me they were too busy hanging up a fucking curtain pole to help me, I smashed the shit out of my phone. Like, I'd smashed up the flat considerably before I set the fire as well, so there's just glass everywhere. My phone was like in the whole place was filled with black smoke because there's no way I'm going back in for the phone now. So my neighbour is out in his garden. He's like digging a hole or some shit. I don't really remember what he was doing out there, but he was gardening, and he is like completely unaware at this point that there's a fire. So I go up to him and he's like, "Hey, you alright? How's it been going? How's college going?" And I was like, "College is fine, but I need you to phone 999 right now because I set a fire." And this guy did not believe me. He thought I was joking, and he was like, yeah, right. Like, he was in no rush to phone them because he didn't believe me. So at this point, the windows are closed, right? But a lot of windows in the UK, they have like little vents or they have like gaps, so the black smoke is like pouring up out of the windows and you can see it like clearly there. So I point at the smoke and I'm like, "No, look, seriously, dude, it's a fire. I'm not fucking joking. You need to phone them right now." And I think I was smiling when I did that because, do you know like the smile you do when you just can't believe somebody? Like, he didn't believe me, and I was like, "Huh, look, the fire." That's going to be relevant later, the fact that I was smiling when I pointed at it. So eventually, after seeing the black smoke that was pouring out of the windows, like thick black smoke, I've honestly never seen like a fire at that scale before, or a house fire or anything, so I was just like a bit taken back myself, to be honest. He passes me his phone to phone them, but it's like the oldest fucking thing ever, and I can't figure out how to work it. So eventually one of my family members walks by because this family member lived nearby, and I told them about like what I'd just done and what had happened. Everybody's understandably a bit freaked out. I actually can't remember who ended up phoning, but one of them ended up phoning. I also can't remember who told the other people to get out of the flats. It might have been when the fire brigade actually arrived there that they started getting people out. I can't remember. I just remember that I was sat in the front garden drinking beers out of my bag and eating flapjacks, like completely unfazed and devoid of all like empathy or anything about what I'd done, and that basically the whole street was out like gawking about it. At one point there was like a really big bang, like an explosion, and I didn't know what it was until afterwards. Someone had told me that the bedroom, because the bedroom had the most fabric stuffing, like the mattress and stuff that I'd set fire to in there, and the curtains and the carpet. So I feel like that was where the fire was biggest, and because all the windows were closed and like none of the pressure can escape, I think the back window literally just smashed and blew out onto the back garden. So the fire boys came, they put the fire out, and the police were like interviewing people. There was a neighbour from up the road that I'd never met before, and she took me into her flat, and I was basically just sat with their whole family, like talking to the kid and stuff. It was really weird, but I think that she was just trying to get me like out of the street so that people would stop gawking and staring at me. So the police are going around trying to interview anybody who knows anything about what happened or who was there. I'm not sure if they know where I am at this point. I think they might know that I'm in the flat, but they just don't think I'm a risk of like running away or anything. But the only person who actually witnessed anything initially was the neighbour who I told about the fire, and he wouldn't believe me, so I pointed at the window and I was like, "Dude, there's a fucking fire." And from his perspective, because I was smiling, he told the police that I was pointing at what I'd done. I was pointing at the fire and the smoke coming out of the window, and I was laughing, and obviously that did not look good. So then I was very calmly arrested. I've been arrested quite a few times and I've never had cuffs on. Maybe they don't see me as a physical threat, maybe they just think I'm the guy, I don't know. And the police are very compassionate to me on the way to the hospital. They explained that obviously I would have to go and get assessed by by mental health professionals and that they would decide whether I was competent enough to go to jail for this or whether I needed treatment. And that's something called a triage. It's like 3 doctors, they just ask you questions in a room. But I think that the police already knew what was going to happen because they said that they bet that they're going to end up being stuck with me and that they're really sorry, basically. They just felt bad for me because they kind of knew that I was going to go in there after committing this crime and still not be able to get any help, which is exactly what happened. We went to the hospital. The triage team asked me a bunch of basic questions completely unrelated to the crime or anything, mostly just asking me about my relationship with my family. Just absolutely stupid stuff that just didn't seem to me to be relevant at all to the crime that I'd just done. Anyway, from that little 10-minute chat that they had with me, they somehow theorized that I was perfectly mentally well and I should just go straight to prison. So they slapped me with that Monopoly card, do not pass go, do not collect £200, go straight to jail. So June the 30th, 2018 was a Friday, I believe, and they don't send people out until Monday. So you basically go to the jail and then you go to the prison afterwards. So the jail is like the local police station, but they can't transfer people over the weekend. So I was in there over the weekend, and I was finally on the 2nd of July. Maybe it was a bit over the weekend because I remember those dates clearly. I got a prison tattoo of the date. It wasn't actually done in prison, but it's just the date because I don't know why I did that. I don't know why. It's not cool at all. So on the 2nd of July, I'm told that I'm being transferred to Newhall Prison in Wakefield because sometimes you can be released until your court date, but if it's a crime that's this serious, they have to keep you in custody on what's called remand, which is basically just like you're in custody for your own safety and the safety of others until your court date, and then whatever sentence you get on your court date, the time on remand still counts towards time served. So until getting in this prison transportation bus, I guess you'd call it, I never really knew what one looked like. I had seen them before, but I just didn't know what they were. I'll put an image of what they look like here on the side. Well, you know, because they have little tiny windows, kind of like an aeroplane, and I'd seen them out and about, like, previous in life, mostly, like, in the city centre and stuff, but I always kind of thought they were for horses. Like, I thought that the tiny windows is so the horses can, like, peekaboo out the window and stuff. But no, it's like the bus, each of those windows is a seat, each seat has got its own, like, separate cubicle type thing, so you can hear other people, but you can't really see them or anything. I was being transported with a bunch of guys. I was the only woman in the bus, I think, and they were really rowdy, and I tried to stay quiet because I was just scared shitless, to be quite honest. But at some point, I asked, like, if there was any way that I could pee, because I didn't know how long the journey would be. They didn't say, like, ETA or anything before we left, so I was like, oh my god, I could be in this bus for, like, hours longer. It turns out it was just a short trip. I asked about the toilet, and the screw told me that they can give me a bag full of sawdust that you sort of just piss in, and it sort of just soaks up the piss. Or I could just wait like 20 minutes because we'll be there in 20 minutes, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll do the waiting, it's fine. But the lads in the back of the bus heard my voice and they were like, oh, there's a lass in here, no, there's a girl in here, there's a woman in here. I don't know where they were being transferred to or from because we were just dropping them off first. I don't know how long it had been since they had, like, spoken to a woman. I don't know, but they seemed, like, really, really hyped up at the fact that there was a woman on the bus. And a bunch of sexual yelling and trying to flirt with me and stuff. And I was just silent. Until they got off the bus, and I was like, oh! But we dropped them off. And then we headed to my prison. We pulled up to the gate in June and July of 2018. It was like a massive heat wave in the UK. It was one of the hottest summers that we've had on record. So it was beautifully sunny. And when we pulled up to the prison, I don't know what I was expecting. Like, I don't know. I think I was probably just expecting like a big, like, concrete building with tiny windows and bars and shit. But it looked kind of like a village or like a school or like a youth club or something. It was just so colourful. As soon as we pulled into the drive part, there was a bunch of prisoners out just like planting like all colours of flowers in these big barrels. Everybody was just like smiling and having fun. And then we entered into the reception area, and that's where they'll intake you and they get your like info straight and see if you need anything arranging, and they make you sit on a metal detector chair so they can check if you got anything up your butt. But the reception area was also really friendly looking. Like all the walls are painted colourful, all the bars, like any fixtures in the room are painted really bright and colourful. The carpet's kind of like a turquoise. There's like this exposed wooden beam going across the top of the reception, and it's just lined up with teddy bears. Definitely not what I expected. And then, we go up to the desk to tell them who I am and get me on the system and whatever, and they're just so nice and polite and helpful. Like, I don't know whether I've got this idea of what prison is supposed to be like from TV or some shit, but maybe male prison is a bit different. I'm told it's quite a lot different, but it just seemed like all peaches and rainbows there. It obviously wasn't, but it just struck me as being way too friendly looking, kind of unusual. So I can't remember the exact date, but I know that they banned smoking cigarettes in prison literally right before I got there, and I was a full-on smoker at the time. If you think full-on smoker means like 20 or 40 a day, that's like nothing. I was super addicted to nicotine, but I was really glad that they have vapes there. So when we were doing the intake, they just basically ask if you want a vape. It costs like £15 for the vape, and then you can buy pods on Canteen. Canteen is like prison shop, but I'll get to that. So if you don't have any money when you were arrested, like if you don't have any funds with you that could be put to your balance, it would basically be like a debt. They don't do debt for anything else, I don't believe, other than the vape you get when you get in. I feel like this is probably a tactic on the prison's part more than it is a privilege for the prisoners to have a vape. I just imagine you're addicted as hell to nicotine. Like if you've been addicted to nicotine, you've been a smoker, you know how stressed you get when you initially just completely run out of nicotine in your system. So I feel like offering people a vape as soon as they get in is their way of saying like, hey, we're cool, No need to freak out. Don't hit anyone. Just vape instead. So after the intake is done, I'm taken to the wing where the cell is, where I will be living for who knows how long, because nobody knows really when court is. There's like the main wings of the prison that are for people who are going to be staying there a while. There's different wings for different things. So there's like a drug addict wing. I don't know if they called it that, but that's where they have most of the rehab support, in that wing. And they've got like the mental health support wing. They had like different ones. But I was put into the starter wing, which is like you go there for 4 weeks, I think, ish, when you first get there. And it's basically like softer prison. Like everything's just a little bit easier there. No pressure. I guess it's like an adjustment phase type of thing. So if you're on that wing, you get extra food. So as well as your 3 meals a day, you also get a sandwich at night. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just so people could adjust to the routine of not being able to just get food whenever you want. And also you don't have to work. But the trouble with this is that they often don't have enough staff on hand for people to actually come out and associate with each other on the wing. So for the majority of the time, it's 23-hour lockdown and you're just locked in the cell. So I'm going to try to find an accurate picture of what the prison cell sort of might have looked like. I was put into a safe cell because of my past with self-harming and stuff. It's basically the exact same as all the other cells, except the furniture is literally just moulded into the ground or like glued into the ground. The regular cells have an actual like wooden bed and an actual toilet, but the safe cell ones are more like the police station, where it's just kind of the toilet just comes out of the ground, the bed just comes out of the ground. There's a little desk, there's a couple of shelves, there's a teeny tiny kettle for making a cup of tea, and there's also a tiny TV that had between 5 and 10 channels on it. I actually can't remember. It wasn't that many, but they had some some of the main ones in the UK, some of the decent ones. So the starter wing is very boring because you don't have a job, you can't go elsewhere in the prison. Like, they have a college part where they do education. You can't go there, can't go to the gym, you can't go to the library. They have a hair salon there, like in the education part where people learn to do hair and you can pay to go and get your hair done. Not allowed to go there, so pretty much just sat in the cell the whole time, bored, absolutely shitless. I had a bit of an issue at first where I was barely consuming any liquid because I'm quite sensitive to tastes and stuff with my autism, and some beverages I just simply do not find acceptable, to the point where I would just rather go thirsty and be dehydrated during a heat wave rather than drink them. So every morning, as well as your breakfast, which is usually just like a bag of cereal and a carton of milk, they also give you 5 tea bags and 5 things of sugar, but I don't drink tea, and they didn't have coffee, and it was so irritating because there was no way I was going to drink tea, even if it meant that I would die. No, I'm kidding, it wasn't that dramatic, but still. They had these little sachets of squash, like fruit pop that you add into the water, if people from around the world don't know what that is. But it tasted like ass. Eventually, I started warming to it though, and I just started like really liking it and craving it. To the point where actually when I got out of prison, I looked up if I could still get the brand of juice packets that they had. But I had a couple of issues with the authority at first, and I guess just kind of doing what I was told. I never really been in that situation before where I had to literally do what I was told and I couldn't just throw a paddy and get my own way, basically. So they wanted me to piss in a cup so they could do like drug test, pregnancy test, all that stuff you have to do when you're like taken in. But because I wasn't drinking any water, I couldn't piss, and they wouldn't believe me, and I was like, dude, I literally can't piss. And then on top of that, they wouldn't let me have my blue inhaler. The blue inhaler is not something that you're supposed to take on any kind of schedule or every day. That would be like the purple inhaler, the brown inhaler, or something like that. That's a steroid. The blue one, salbutamol, is for basically emergencies, and if you're with your asthma, if your breathing gets too tight for you to manage on your own, like, it's not ideal for you to be taking it if not necessary. But they wouldn't let me have it on me, and all of my entire life I've always either had my inhaler on me or had it nearby. So I was just freaking out that I was gonna have an asthma attack because I've never been without it. Like, it's almost as if when I don't have it and I know that I haven't brought it with me somewhere, my breathing gets worse, I guess because of the panic, or maybe it's placebo or something. But I was just panicking, and I told them I need to have the inhaler with me, please let me have it with me. And they said it'll be in the medical office, you can request it when you want it. And I was like, how am I supposed to request it if I'm having an asthma attack in the night and I can't breathe? And they're like, oh, you press this button and someone will come. And I'm like, what if I can't breathe enough to get up to press the fucking button? And they explained to me that the reason why they don't let people keep the inhalers is because people take out the inside part and they use the outside part as a crack pipe. And I was just like, please dude, I promise you, I pinky promise you, I am not going to smoke crack out of this inhaler shell. I'm not going to let anybody smoke crack out of it. I'm not going to lend it to anybody. Like, please. They still wouldn't let me have it. So at some points in my life, I've been known to use cheeky forms of protest to get my own way. I'm not saying that it's smart or that it always works, because it's definitely one of the many stupid things that I've done when I've been especially mentally ill. But they are required to take you outside for rec for like an hour a day, especially since it's a heat wave and everything. Although it was kind of shit because there was no shelter, so it was just like getting pushed out into the blazing sun. But anyways, it's kind of like a basketball court type of thing with fences all around it. There's a couple of those exercise equipments, you know, that you see at like public park kind of things, like weird swingy things. No one was really working out, they were just playing on them, like spinning around like wee. But anyways, so we went out for rec, and I just decided that if they didn't believe me that I would need my inhaler on me at any given time, that I should prove that to them. So I started running up and down from one end of the court to the next, just getting faster and faster and faster. And as someone with pretty bad asthma, I cannot run for long without having an asthma attack. I must have told some of the other prisoners what I was. It feels kind of weird saying prisoners, but it also feels kind of weird saying inmates. I could just call them the guys. So some of the guys, I must have told them because people were cheering me on. I remember that, but I don't remember, a lot of this is just so fuzzy. But I ran and I ran and I ran until I fell the fuck over, and they had to get the prison paramedic to come and see me and bring me an inhaler. And I was like, you know what? It took you 20 minutes to get here with that inhaler. What's the likeliness that you could have been too late? And then they basically let me keep it. I don't know whether that was smart on their part, because it just kind of taught me that I could get my own way by throwing a fit or, acting like a child. So I tried it, similar things a few more times after that, but they didn't work. Also, you might think that I'm a dick for this, but for the whole time that I was in prison, I pretended to be vegan. I don't know why. I do know why, to get better food, but I don't remember making the decision. I just remember when you fill out the intake form and they were asking about dietary requirements, I was like, which one of these is going to have the best food, the freshest food? And I was like, vegan, definitely, because whatever's vegan is not going to come from whatever tin or pot of slop that everybody else is getting. It's going to have to be made separately. Maybe even fresh food, And also the breakfast every morning was milk, and I've got a big problem with milk. Not lactose intolerance, I'm just autistic and weird about milk. Milk in some forms is okay, yeah? Cheese, ice cream, chocolate, maybe even a thick milkshake, fine, okay? But just straight up liquid milk, so I was getting the vegan milk. And it was not that bad at all, to be quite honest, that I did get freshly made foods. A lot of the meals that people would get would be double or triple carbs. And I think this is why people tend to gain quite a lot of weight in prison, because they kind of just keep everybody docile by feeding them a shitload of carbs. So you would have a meal and it would have 2 different types of carb already on there. Usually something like a potato waffle or chips. It had been fried to be cooked earlier in the day, and then right before lunchtime it was refried again to heat it back up. So they're just carby foods absolutely dripping in oil. And then also on the way out of where you get your food, there was always just a pile of bread, a mountain of loaves of bread, Hovis fucking bread, and there was no rule about how much bread you could take, so people were just grabbing handfuls of bread. I think a lot of people in there are detoxing from drugs, maybe alcoholism, I just totally made that into a new word with how I pronounce that shit. But I think that the reason why people, they're just looking for that hit of good in their brain, from when they stop taking drugs, so they just eat. It's the same thing as when people stop smoking, they tend to gain weight because they just don't know what the fuck to do with their hands. So I guess that's why everybody used to actually fight over the bread. But my meal was always something with actual real vegetables in it, which is fried rice, or they homemade a pie for me. What's homemade? They homemade a pie, bro, for me, thinking that I was vegan. I felt really bad about that, but whatever, I got the good food. So for some reason on a Tuesday, everyone would get a full packet of biscuits each, and it's usually a custard cream or a bourbon biscuit. But because I was vegan, I used to get fat ass cookies, lemon zest cookies, dark chocolate chip cookies, just better shit. I actually kept the fact that I wasn't vegan a secret for most of the whole time I was there. I think I might have told a few people towards the end, but I didn't want the secret to get out that you could just lie and get better food, because everybody would start doing it and then they'd be all really suspicious. And I think in the end, when I did tell a few people, they decided they were all going vegan, and somebody told me that people were getting a bit suspicious because the guards are why do we suddenly have so many vegans in this prison? But then the staff that watched you on the wing and in your cells and at work and stuff were usually different from the ones who took you to the visitation hall. Usually somebody would come and get you from the visitation hall and take you there. So if there was nobody around who could find out my dirty little secret, I would get whoever was visiting me to buy so much chocolate from the vending machine, like so much. So I would spend I'd probably get like 10 different chocolate bars at most in a visit, and people were trying to talk to me and ask me how I was, and I was just too busy stuffing my face with chocolate because I missed it so much. I mean, it wasn't a total lie because I have been vegan on and off for a lot of times in my life. I was vegan for a couple of years previous to that. I do still think that it's better for me, for the animals, and for the planet, but it's just really hard for me to actually eat a fulfilling diet as someone who's so picky with food and drinks while trying to be vegan. So it's not like it was a total lie, you know. They gave me an ethical choice of which dietary requirements I wanted to have while I was in prison, and I was like, fuck it, I'll be vegan while I'm here. Just do a bit of good. So when I was in the starter wing, because we were locked down in our cells for so much of the day, there wasn't really much of an opportunity to go out and empty out the bin. There's like a little tiny office bin type of thing in there, and there wasn't a lot of chance to air it out. Also, in a safe cell, you can't open the window. Other people could open their window like this much, like just enough to get air, but not really enough to stick your head out of. But because I was in a safe cell, the window didn't open at all. There was just like this stupid vent that had a switch to turn the vent on and off, and it was full of fucking dust because in the winter, the air comes through the vent, and so people would stick sanitary pads on top of the vent to stop the air coming in, but it also made the grime and the dust accumulate in the vent. So then in the summer, when you actually want the air to come through, the air doesn't fucking come through. So anyways, what I'm getting at is that the whole time I was in starter wing for about 4 weeks, my whole being stank of onions so bad. Because I would get the healthy option, because I'm vegan, so I would get a salad, but I guess because onions are cheaper than other vegetables that you can get, literally half of the box was just, it's like they just grabbed like a fat handful of onions and they were like banged it in a box and they were like, boom, salad. Because, and I'm not going to eat that many onions, so the bin, it was just sweating hot with sweaty hot onions, and everybody would have a go at me because my cell stinks of onions and I stink of onions, and I was like, it's not my fucking fault, tell them to stop giving people so many fucking onions. So I think that that's about all of the stories that I can say for that wing, because nothing exciting really happened. But then I got transferred to big boy wing, where I could have a bit more of a life, I suppose you'd call it. Still in a safe cell, and because I was 18, I wasn't allowed to bunk with anybody, so everybody else was paired up in twos, like Noah's Ark, but I was too young to be paired up, which I think is quite sensible. If you're under 21, you can't be paired up with like a grown-ass adult. I understand the risks with that. I appreciated having my own space, but it was fairly lonely. I was still in a safe cell, still on the bottom floor, because I guess all the safe cells are on the bottom floor. Trying to think about what else I can tell you about from there. I saw 2 people that I knew from the outside in prison. So that was fucking crazy because it was so coincidental. Both of them were past friends of mine's mums, so they were both the mothers of like people who've been close friends with me in childhood. So that was super freaky. One of them I totally expected to see there because she was a heroin addict. She basically just stole stuff for a living, and like a career criminal. Like she once said to me that like if you rob a bunch of stuff from a shop, you're only gonna get like 2 days in prison, so it's really just free shit if you don't mind prison that much. But so I expected to see her there. I walked past the cell door when I was on my way to get meds, and there's like a teeny window in the door, usually just so that like screws can come past and peek and see if you're okay. But at the corner of my eye, I seen her, and I had to like go back. I was like, what the fuck? And I was knocking on the door. I think that she'd been smoking something heavy because she didn't recognize me at first, but then later was like, oh my god, Alice, that's crazy, what the fuck are you doing here? I didn't ask what she was doing there because it just was a given, to be honest. I'd probably be more surprised to see her outside than in prison. But the second mother of a previous friend, I did not expect to see in there at all. This family is like the goody two shoes of, they're like British Flanders, you know? like super they would never even do a weed, okay? They would never even have one marijuana. That's how Ned Flandersy these square people are. Big squares. So I did not expect to see this woman in here. I walked past her on the way out from a visitation, and I saw her, and she saw me, and we just ran towards each other, like almost in slow motion. It was super weird. And then she hugged me, and then she got angry at me for being in prison. I was like, who the fuck is talking? She was like, what the fuck are you doing in here? What did you do? And I was like, bitch, what did you do? She didn't tell me what she did, but I found out through the grapevine afterwards that she had also had a mental health issue. She had escaped from her home. I say escaped, she wasn't trapped there or anything like a zoo or whatever. She left her house in the middle of the night in gym jams with a knife because she was hallucinating and seeing things, and there was some people across the road looking at her, and for some reason, in whatever mental state she was in, she decided that they were trying to R-word her. They were going to harm her and assault her, basically. So I'm not sure if she actually stabbed anybody or not, but it was like an attempted stabbing at the very least, because she was arrested for, flailing the knife around. So yeah, that was quite an interesting coincidence that happened while I was in there. Trying to think about what else I can tell you about. The canteen is, I don't know why people call it that, because it just basically is like the prison shop. Nobody calls the actual canteen part where you get the food, like the meals, the canteen. They just call it the kitchen. And then the canteen is basically like a myth. The man, the myth, the legend. Well, nobody knows where it is except those who work there, so I'm not really kind of sure where this stuff came from. But basically, at the beginning, on a weekend, I think at some point, somebody would shimmy a piece of paper under your door, and it's like a list with a bunch of tick boxes of like everything that you can buy and the price of it and how much credit that you've got. So you can basically get paid while you're there. You can get like, I think it was something like £1.50 a week base rate for those who didn't work, and then something like £2 or £3.50 a week for those who did work. And the vapes cost more than that, like the vape pods. So if you vaped, you would have had to save up for multiple weeks to get one pack of vapes, which is why they were quite rare. Or you could be someone who's lucky enough to have people from the outside sending money in for you. So when I got arrested, I had a little bit of cash on me, something like 50 quid, but I also had my bank card, and I was able to sign a consent to give that bank card to one of my family members so that they could send me money in. I had just been paid like the day before I got arrested, so there was like £1,000 or more in there. So that was basically used to send me money every week so that I could get vape, fizzy pop, snacks, fruits, you name it, you can buy it on there. You can, for some reason, even though you don't have a fridge or anywhere to keep things cool, you can buy like eggs and butter and stuff. There's a special wing that people don't really see because it's behind a gate that doesn't have gaps in it and you can't really see it. And that's for the most responsible prisoners who have been there for a while or will be there for a while, who are completely trusted to basically run things on their own. I only ever heard about it, okay? I heard Chinese whispers about what it was like down there, so I'm not sure how accurate any of this is. But apparently, according to the legend, the prisoners there have the locks to their own cells, so they can just let themselves in and out of the cell anytime they want, any day or night. There's a kitchen with like a fridge and stuff, so you can go cook, and they just basically have complete freedom. Like, they can just go out and sit and watch TV together anytime. So I'm guessing that's maybe why you could buy eggs and butter and milk and stuff like that, because I don't see how in the middle of July, in the middle of a heat wave, you're going to be buying milk and then just leaving it there at room temperature. No, well above room temperature to fucking curdle. I don't get it. But yeah, fun fact, the family member who received my bank card had actually cleared the entire account out pretty much within the first few days of me being in prison. So I was under the impression that they were taking the money out that was needed for petrol for driving to visit me, and all the chocolate from the vending machine, and then also the canteen stuff that I was buying, the vapes and everything, and that they were just taking it out and sending it into the prison account. But no, that was not actually what was happening. What happened was my bank got completely fucking cleaned out within the first few days. Maybe to fuel a bit of alcoholism, a bit of gambling. I'm not quite sure where the money went, but I can presume it wasn't for anything good. Maybe for paying off bills that were late, because that person was very, very irresponsible with money. But anyways, they had taken all the money out, and then they were just sending me the money that they were actually sending into the prison was from like their paydays. So all my money was just gone. It was never even there the whole time that I thought it was there. And I didn't find out, and they didn't even admit to it until I got out of prison, put my bank card in the ATM, and the balance was like fucking nothing. And I was like, guys, where did my money go? And I didn't get any explanation as to where the money went or why it went. All I got was, here's £250, sorry, that's all I could afford to pay back. I was like, okay, well, do you know, I'm the type of person where if a family member or a close friend or someone who needed me just asked for money, like they just said, listen, I'm in trouble, can I just have some fucking money? I would be like, okay, yeah, take it. Like, I'm in prison, I don't need it. But it's the sneakiness. The sneakiness is unfucking necessary. I'm trying to think about what else I can tell you about. Prison radio. I think that the prison radio was filmed in a male prison that was close by, or maybe it might have been a bit further down south because of the accents, I'm not quite sure. But they had the funniest intros ever, and they had like this thing where they'd read in messages from family and friends and stuff, and they'd be like, this one goes out to Big Danny, big up your mans on E-Wing. I just thought they were really funny, and they'd play like a whole mixture of music I thought was pretty cool. Other than that, I just had like 4 Music or like MTV, I can't remember which. I had one of the music channels, you know, the ones that just play the stupid fucking chart music on repeat. So I had no choice but to get really into Cardi B. I didn't have a choice. I actually read books in prison, and that was quite interesting because I struggle to read. I have big issues concentrating with my ADHD. Sometimes in order to actually take in the information from a written text, I have to read it multiple times, which is why I prefer to have both audio and the text as well. So whenever I watch TV, I watch subtitles because it helps me to actually process what's going on better. So it did take me a while, but I think obviously reading is like most things, once you practice you get better at it. So eventually I could just read them straight up and I wouldn't have to go back and reread any of the information. I read some crime stuff, like detectives that were pretty badass. They didn't have many of the popular books in the library, they kind of just had what they had. It was mostly just donated stuff. They also had like a little charity shop type of thing where basically anybody in there can donate clothes that they don't want anymore, or people who are leaving the prison can leave clothes behind that they don't want anymore, and you can go and buy the clothes for like 50p or something. It's like, it was pretty cool. Yeah, the clothes that I had in there were terrible. So many floral patterns, so much pink, absolute granny clothes, terrible, big baggy granny panties, mate. There's a lot more that I waffle on about prison, but I guess I'll just get to the end of the story because this is already a really fucking long video now. So basically, I was terrified because I initially got arrested with arson with intent to endanger life, because even if you don't specify that you have specific intent to endanger someone's life, if you were knowledgeable that people could have been hurt when you committed the arson, it's still with intent to endanger life. So while when I set the fire, I wasn't thinking about the neighbours or anything like that, which is really fucked up, I know. While at the time I wasn't thinking about them and I didn't even consider them really, I did know that they were there, which is why I got with intent to endanger life, because nobody was hurt, but they could have been. So I think the maximum sentence for that is something like 9 years, going up on 10 years, like between 5 to 9 years. So I was obviously shitting a brick because I was only just 18. My life was just starting, and I thought that I was going to be nearly 30 years old when I got out of this place. Like, for context, I'm 25 now, so if I would have got the maximum sentence for that, I would still be in there now, which is just so crazy because in that time, I've changed things around, and I've changed my perspective, and I've built a whole life for myself. So that's a pretty scary thought that I could have been in there that long. But I went to my plea hearing and I pleaded guilty, and they knocked it down from arson with intent to endanger life to reckless arson, which just means you were being reckless and you didn't consider if it would hurt anybody or not, kind of a different thing. I don't know, I'm not a fucking lawyer, so I'm just trying to explain. I'm explaining it to you the best that I understood at the time, which wasn't very well. So, reckless arson's got a max of like 5 years, and it's got a lower point as well. So, I think the lower point being 2 years or 3 years to 5 years. So that was a big achievement, but still, even with the possibility of spending years in there, it was really daunting. It was very lonely. It was isolating. Like, you do have a lot of stuff in there that some people would call luxuries. Some people would say prisoners shouldn't have TVs. They shouldn't be able to make themselves a cup of tea. Like, these are luxuries kind of thing. They shouldn't be able to listen to music, but without those things, you would go fucking insane being just sat there all the time. Like, it's only humane to give people stuff to do in that situation, no matter how bad the crime is that they've done. Because when you sit in a room in silence by yourself for so long, you can actually go fucking mad from that. And it's like really stressful, really painful. So I eventually got my court date, which was about 3 months after I had been initially taken into prison. The court dates are really like willy-nilly. There were so many people in there who would be looking forward to a court date, and they'd be really excited because they thought they were going to go home, and then on the actual day that they were supposed to go to court, they would just be told that it's actually been cancelled and it has to be rescheduled for in a couple of months' time. So I was really stressed that might happen, but the court date was fine. After 3 months, I went to Crown Court. So the plea hearing was with the magistrates court, and then the final court was at the Crown Court, because arson falls under one of those higher category crimes where they have to take you to Crown Court. And they basically just pleaded my case for me. I didn't really say anything. I had a free lawyer that I was entitled to. That lawyer had arranged for a court psychiatrist to come and assess me, and that was when I was finally diagnosed with BPD, because after fucking years of me telling people that I had it, apparently only being in prison would actually get me that diagnosis at that age. People used to just tell me I was too young. They were like, oh, your personality's still developing. You can get that tested for this disorder and assessed for this disorder when you're 20 old. And I was like, what the fuck? Because by their standards, I still wouldn't be diagnosed even now. So I might still be just as fucked up, not knowing what the hell's wrong with me. But anyways, they explained about my disorder. They explained about like how likely it would be for me to reoffend, which to them was low. They basically gave me a suspended sentence for 3 years, a 3-year suspended sentence. And a suspended sentence means that you go home today, but you're still under their watchful eye. You still have to go to probation. You still have to meet these requirements. And if you don't meet those requirements, or you get arrested for anything else in those 3 years, you do go back to prison and you serve the full sentence. I don't know why this is, but I'm told that every day, every 24 hours in prison counts as 2 days. I asked somebody why, like another one of the prisoners, and they said it was because the day counts as a day and the night counts as a day. That just seems like bullshit to me. I'm not quite sure how the fuck it works. But because I had done 3 months on remand, they doubled that and they took 6 months off my sentence. So I was to do 2.5 years remaining on a suspended sentence. It's actually a really funny story about what happened at court. Because of all the legal jargon and stuff that was being thrown around, and the fact that I didn't know what suspended sentence meant and nobody explained it and just whatever. And also my family, who were up on the I don't know what they're called, the look down at you in shame chairs. My family were up there, and they also did not know what the fuck was being said, because they just didn't speak lawyer or judge. Like, so when they said that I had a 3-year suspended sentence, my family just presumed that I was going back to prison, so they got in the car and they drove home. And I didn't realise that I was getting released until somebody passed me a bin bag or a bin liner, like, full of my belongings, and they were like, here you go, get out. And I was like, what? I was like, I just got the sentence. And they were like, suspended sentence, go home. Like, they literally just were like, get out. And I was like, how am I supposed to get home? Like, I'm so far away from home. I don't have any way to phone home. I can't ET phone home right now. My phone had been given back to me with my belongings, but it was dead, so I didn't know what I was supposed to do. So I had to ask a security guard outside of the courthouse if I could please use his phone to ring my family and tell them that I'd just been let out and like to stop driving away and to come back, like come back and get me, I'm here. But obviously I looked like a prisoner because I had the bag full of my clothes and I had the prison clothes on and stuff. So the guy who lent me his phone, he was like clinging onto his phone for dear life. I guess he thought I was gonna nick it, but he was like, okay, type in the number. So I typed in the number, I got on speaker and I was like, you dumb bitches, I've been released, drive back. So they drove back and they got me. And then that's when I went to the ATM and I confronted them about where the fuck my money was. I got the £250, that was all they could give me back. And I phoned up my friends because a lot of my friends didn't know where I'd been. Some of them, like 2 of them did, but some of them didn't. So I phoned up my friends and I was like, oh, I just got out of prison. And everyone was like, what the fuck? That's where you've been. I don't know where you've been. So I decided to immediately go out drinking. It's probably not the smartest decision I've ever made in my entire life, but we went out drinking some warm Fosters or something of that nature, and we went into a field and set a fire, big bonfire, which is just double ironic. But anyways, that's the end of the fucking story. Nobody gave me any help or support or treatment after this. Basically, prison is supposed to rehabilitate people, but nobody was trying to rehabilitate me in any way. In fact, the fact that I have managed to not be arrested since is purely of my own sheer will and the support from the people around me, because I was not, even despite being convicted for arson and them saying in court that this is a direct result of my disorder and that I need help, I wasn't given any fucking help. So, yeah, boo-hoo me, that's the end of the story. Hope you enjoyed. If you got any questions, let me know and I'll follow up. Sorry that I was a clown for this. I know it might not have been terribly appropriate, but I honestly just don't like my fucking face, so bye.